Welcome to church, everyone. It's good to have you. Just want to welcome today, especially our family from the FCC. So, those of you who are from FCC, if you can just raise your hand. Welcome, FCC. Good to have you. And we're excited to have you. And there's going to be actually an event after the service with the kids and our very own Poema. They're going to host FCC today into an. Am I right? Oh, why am I? We are right. Am I right? All right. So we look forward to just spending more time with you guys, and thank you so much for coming. Today, I want to just get going with the sermon as we begin this new series. So I ask that you just look at your own bulletin today, and for all the announcements. All right. Let's go straight to our passage. We're gonna start a new series on the book of Esther. And this is the first sermon in this series. The King Became Furious is the title. Esther chapter 1, verses 1 to 22. But I'm just going to read verses 1 to 3. All right? So let me begin at verse 1. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes. I always have a hard time pronouncing these names. The Xerxes, who ruled over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Kush. At that time, King X reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. And in the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. The military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. Amen. So like I said, we're going to start a new series on the book of Esther. And there's a reason why we're going to this book. Because this book is all about feasts. In fact, it happens 8 times throughout this book. And as you know, we have declared this year, our 7th year together as a community, to be God's year of His amazing and awesome feast. So we want to continue to look at this theme through different passages and different books in the Bible. But most importantly, so that we might all enter into God's feast, not just the worldly feast, but the feast of God's kingdom, we want to enter into together. So that's the reason why we're going to the book of Esther starting today. The book of Esther is a story of Jews in Persia. A Jewish woman by the name of Esther becomes the queen of Persia, and through her, the Jewish people avoid the massacre that was planned against them. That's the gist of the entire story that unfolds in this book. The kingdom of Israel in the Old Testament began as a theocratic nation, which means they had no king. God was their king. But then with Saul as their first king, they become a nation that is ruled by human king. No longer a theocratic nation, but it becomes a monarchy. And eventually, though, this kingdom is divided into 2, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. But as a result of their unending idolatry and sin, God uses other empires around them to bring these 2 kingdoms down. The northern kingdom is brought down at the hands of the Assyrians, 722 BC, and the southern kingdom of Judah at the hands of the Babylonians in 586 BC. But then Babylon, that conquered southern kingdom, eventually gets conquered by Persia. And under the king, this king by the name of Cyrus, Jewish people returned to Jerusalem on 3 different occasions. So you have the table up there that you can have a look. But if you see the table there, Jewish people returned to Jerusalem on 3 different occasions. First return, BC 536. And this takes place, or what happened, you can read about in Ezra chapters 1 to 6. And then second return happens in BC 458. And you can read all about that in Ezra chapters 7 to 10. And then they return to Jerusalem for the 3rd time, and you can read all about it in the book of Nehemiah. This is where they come back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. So when did the story of Esther take place? As you see in the table there, between the first and the second return, sometime around BC 478, under the rule of Persia. This is when the book of Esther, or the stories that take place in that book, happen around that time. Now, as we begin this new series, and whenever I begin a new book, when we do a book series, I always ask this question: how are we going to read this book? In other words, what is the lens through which we're going to read this entire book? And I want to answer that question by actually reading a poem, or more like a short story poem called The Cookie Thief by Valerie Cox. I was thinking of summarizing it, but then I don't know if I'll be a great storyteller to do justice to this short poem. So even though it's, actually I'm reading it, if you can actually just follow along, I would appreciate that very much. So this is how it goes. Let's go to the next slide. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. We all do this, right? When we travel at the airport. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man sitting beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she bought a bag of cookies, and she's sitting down, and there's a bag of cookie, and the man who happened to sit right beside her reaches in and takes a cookie. So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as the gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, and thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I would have blackened his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he would do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, ooh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. Why he didn't even show any gratitude? She had never known when she had been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat. Then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she grasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair. The others were his. And he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Wonderful short poem, but great story nonetheless, isn't it? Well, there's a reason why I'm sharing this with you. There's one unique feature of Esther, and it's that in this book, the name of God never appears. And yes, this is a book in the Bible, and God never appears. But what it does, the book of Esther shows us, is that even though he never appears, he is still working even when he is unseen. I'll show you next slide. This is actually the background to our new thumbnail that we've got going for you. But Brother Yale always so amazingly does this work of creating this slide and design for us. But what I would do is, as I begin a new series, I would tell Brother Yale, hey, this is kind of the big theme that I'm thinking of. And then he would give me one or two, three, sometimes examples that he creates. And then I'll go, hey, I like this one or that one. Sometimes I would also just send the one that I would want Yale to work on. And he has. And this is what I've sent him for this series. And the reason is because, just like what I've just said to you, that God is working even when he's unseen. I really felt like this background kind of explains that, right? Because you see the dark part, dark blue, and that's what we see. And then there's a kind of, behind scene, it's fuzzy, it's not unclear, but some sort of light reflection. And we know it's there, but it's not clear. But in the same way, but we know that it's there, and the light is reflecting, and that light is shining behind scene. And that's what the book of Esther invites us to see. Sometimes we just see the dark blue that you see on the screen. But what Esther reminds us is that, behind scene, even though we don't see him in front of us, behind scene, behind us, where he's unseen, just like that light that is being reflected, he never stops working. He is still working, and he will always be working. So Esther invites us to see this story in that light. Not only that, see our own lives in light of that understanding. Just like when this woman realized that she was actually eating from his cookie bag, everything changed, right? Perspective. When she thought it was actually her own cookie bag that he was taking from, can't be any more rude guy than ever, right? This is the most rude guy there is. But once she realized that it was actually her, not her, but his cookie bag, and she was the one eating from it, now she sees this has got to be the most generous, kind, wonderful man there is. In fact, he even shared the last one, broke it in half, and shared it with her. That's the perspective through which Esther invites us to read this story, but beyond what is more, our own lives, stories of our lives. See it through that lens. So Bonhoeffer has said this: before God and with God, we live without God. Before God and with God, we live without God. What that means is he's not saying there's no God, but he's saying God is there. So even when we don't see him and cannot see him, still live before him because he is there. Still live with him because even though we don't see him, he hasn't disappeared. We just don't see him, but he is there. So the moment you realize he is not there, be reminded he is there. So just because we don't see him, don't think that he's gone. In fact, live as if he is there. No, live knowing that he is there. So live with him even when you don't see him. So it is that big lens that I invite you to see this book through, and also through your life. Think about it. Just like that cookie story, right? If you realize that God, even though when he's unseen to us, that he is still there and working, and then with that framework and lens, see your life again, everything will change. Your perspective, interpretation, your heart will change once you begin to see it through this lens. So that's what we will do through this book. Going back to chapter 1, Esther begins with a feast. And it's the feast of this king, the king of Persia, King X. I'll just say one more time. Xerxes, King X is his feast. Verse 4 says, he holds a feast. And how long does it last? 180 days. Am I looking at this right? 180 days. Are you sure it's not 18 days? Yes, it's 180 days of feast. Non-stop. Non-stop. And the passage tells us that he ruled from Egypt, Cush, Egypt, all the way to India. So we know how powerful he is and how wealthy this nation is at this time. So maybe it's not a surprise that he held a party for 180 days straight. But not only that, after he holds his party, he also holds or offers a feast, banquet, lasting 7 days. Look at verse 5. For all the people in the capital city of Susa. And that's understandable, right? If the king is having a feast for 180 days, who's going to actually work for the feast? People in the city. So he thought, okay, well, I'll be a good king and I will provide 7 days of feast for them. And if you read the rest of that section there from 5 to verse 8, what you read there is that he offered bottomless alcohol to his entire city. I mean, I've heard of bottomless Coke, which I always go for. But I have never, I don't know, maybe there is, but not often do I hear about bottomless beer, right? But that's what kind of party he offered to his people. All that wealth and all that power and all that prosperity, man, this guy was wealthy and prosperous. But then when we actually read on, we see that there's more going on than that meets the eye. We may look at this party and go, wow, that's great. He was so powerful and rich. And hey, I kind of wouldn't mind being in his shoes. But when we actually read on, we see that there's more again going on then meets the eye. Because there is a second feast, and this time, the second feast is the feast that the queen, Vashti, throws for the ladies in the palace. So verse 9, Queen Vashti, Queen V, King X, and Queen V, also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King X. On the seventh day, when King X was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. So, let me examine what's happening. So the king's having his party. The queen decides to have her party. But then the king, being drunk, sends the eunuch to the queen, says, "Come over to where I and the man are drinking. I want to display your beauty. Show off how beautiful my queen is." But then if you look at verse 12, it says that the queen refused. She didn't come. And because of that, king became furious, it says. Burned with anger. This is where our title came from today. King became furious. Why? Because the queen didn't come. Obviously, the question you have in your mind is, why did the queen refuse to come? Well, we don't know for sure, but commentators say one possibility is that culturally, the culture at that time was there was a clear separation between men and women. So even for queen to just come into this section where the men with the king are having this drinking party was not appropriate. What is more, appearing before drunken men was considered lewd, L-E-W-D. So she didn't want to appear as being a lewd woman. But some and others go even as far as suggesting that when the king asks her to come, what he's asking her to come is to come naked. Basically, to show off how beautiful my queen is. So he's just trying to show off. So, if you think about it that way, she did the right thing by not coming. But why was it that, second question then is, why did the king become so angry about this? You know what the answer is? It's simple. He was angry because he was king. The most powerful person in the world. That's why he was angry. That's what power does. You see, power makes us proud. Not only that, power makes us easily triggered by the little things. It's not the little people that are triggered by the little things. It's the powerful people that are triggered by the little things. Well, we are all triggered by little things, of course. But it's just that when you have power, you can show it because you are the most powerful one. In fact, what he does, I'll summarize the rest for you. What the king does is, well, bring the wise man who will give me advice. What should I do? She's just she's done this horrible thing against me. And what does the law say? What should we do? And he asks for the advice of the wise men. And all these wise men do is pretty much, as I read it, just sucking up to the king. And says, well, she should not have done that. So what you ought to do is remove her as a queen, kick her out of the palace. But what you should also do, king, is that you should make a law and decree and issue that decree that says, here on end, every wife in every household should obey their husbands. So what does he do? He creates a law to kick her out of the palace, create this law to justify his own wrongdoing. That's what power does. It makes you justify your own wrongdoing. And this is why power is so dangerous. He had everything. So one little thing that didn't go his way, And it wasn't even the right way, but he became furious. That's what power does. But then, as I was reading this is a thought I had, or a question I had. Well, if I were King X, and if I had that much power, that much wealth, I just couldn't bring myself to think that I would do something like that. Would you? I don't think I would do something like that. If you had that much power and something little like that happens, I think I'll be the bigger person. I'll just laugh it off and say, okay, but that's okay. I'm the king. I've got everything. I don't need to get angry about this. So I thought. But then as I kept thinking about this, I felt like the Spirit was causing me to say, but really, Daniel? You wouldn't be like him? Not so fast. And I felt like the Spirit was dropping this thought in my head. Perhaps the reason why we're not like Xerxes is because we don't have that much power. If we did, maybe we may not be so different from him. Because the truth of the matter is, we're all capable of becoming Xerxes. Think about it. Let's say, hypothetically, you're working at a restaurant and you're waitressing or waiter, working as a waiter. And this is not just part-time job you don't have to have, but your life depends on it, living depends on it. And without this job, you can't make your living right now. So let's say you're one of those in that situation. Patron comes. Who's more patient? You or the patron? You. Because you're the weaker party in this situation. You would hold yourself back with patience. Even though there's a rude customer, no, but I need this job. But then those patrons will be quick to just get angry at you, right? Because they hold the power between you and that person in that relationship. You see, we think we're so different from King Xerxes. But if we really think about it honestly, if we had that much power, we run the risk of doing the same thing, being just as angry as he is. So going back to verse 12, she refused, and it says that king became furious and burned with anger. I ask one more time, why did he get furious and angry? Here's the answer, putting it in another way. Because it didn't turn out the way he wanted. That's it. It didn't turn out the way he wanted. How many of us get angry too when things don't turn out the way we want it to? It's not that if I had more, if I had this much wealth and power like this king, I would be so humble and grateful and generous. Not so fast. Don't trust yourself. I don't trust myself on this. I don't even have that much power, but I would not trust myself on this. Don't trust yourself on this wherever you are. If you ever find yourself where you're in a position to have some power, even if it's not like this king, don't trust yourself. Because you may just run the risk of becoming a Xerxes. And don't underestimate the power of greed. Greed is powerful. But looking at this king, here's actually one question that I wanted to ask all of you today, and that question is this. And this is the personal question that I want to ask you. What is that one feast out there in the world or in your life that you wish you had, but you don't? In other words, is there a feast that you are looking at and you're not part of it and you're envying whoever's sitting at that feast, just like the king's feast? What is that one feast? Is it the job that someone else has but you don't have? Is it some wealth that some person has but you don't have? Or is it the school that person is going to but you're not going to? All that glitter that you're looking at and you're envying and you're thinking, oh, if I could just sit at that feast, my life will be so much better. I'll be so much happier. I'll be so much generous and humble person. I'll always give thanks to God. I will serve Him. Not so fast. In fact, because we know God is there behind scene, still working, and He's inviting us to see our lives through that lens, what is calling us, He's calling us to see is, don't envy that. Don't think that that is better than where you are right now. May not see it, but it may end up just, that feast may just be the kind of feast that we're reading about in this chapter today. On the outside, everything, that person's enjoying everything, it's amazing, so awesome. And yet one little thing, that king is unhappy. That's the true reality of the feasts that are out there in the world. So don't envy it. Don't look at it and going, I wish I was part of that feast. Of course, not being able to get the things we really need in life is difficult. Even with that said, sometimes, and I'm getting closer to the takeaway point, sometimes not getting the things we want in life, not being able to achieve the goals we want to achieve, may just be a gift of God. Did you hear that? Not getting the things we want in life, not being able to achieve the things we want to achieve in life, they're not just merely failures, but they may just be a gift that God has given to us. Why? Because it was because of that limitation that we became desperate. We came to God in desperation. It was because of that failure that we become humble instead of being so proud like King Xerxes. Those unfulfilled dreams and goals may just be God's gift in our lives because here's our takeaway. God's grace is also at work in our unfulfilled desires and dreams. God's grace is also there. Don't look at that feast, whatever that feast is, and don't become miserable. It may just be that it was God's gift that you didn't actually get that feast. I mean, to this day, one big failure in my life is not being able to complete my PhD. And I was so close, but I just couldn't do it anymore, and I gave up. And to me, to this day, this is one big failure in my life. And it was hard for me to accept that for a long time. But I realized that there was God's grace and gift in that failure, because you know what that failure did for me? That failure to get my PhD or complete it was the reason why I finally came to accept my calling is pastoral ministry. I'm going to go until the end, and I'll focus in on it. I won't get distracted. I'll just think about being as best of a pastor that I can be. And without that failure, who knows where I would be? Who knows what kind of person I would be, thinking that I'm so smart and I know the Bible and theology so well. You see, God's grace was at work in my unfulfilled desire of getting that PhD. So don't envy the feasts that you see that other people are part of, or you think you should be sitting at. As you will see with Esther, if God has a plan, He will lead you there. But if He doesn't, that's okay. Don't envy it. Don't become miserable because of it. There's one person, I'll end with this, in the Bible, who actually demanded his own way to Jesus, and his name is Peter. Jesus tells the disciples, I'm going to go to the cross and I'm going to die and become salvation to the world. And in Mark chapter 8, hearing that, this is what Peter does. He First, look at verse 32. Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke Jesus. Jesus, you cannot die. You cannot go to the cross. That's not the way you should be. But what does Jesus say after calling him Satan? You do not have in mind the concerns of God. Concerns of God. See it through the lens of what God is doing. Not through the lens of the worldly lens where it says, I must have that feast. I got to sit at that feast. If I don't sit at that feast, my life is going to be ruined and miserable. Instead, before God and with God, live without God. In other words, even when you don't think He is there, even in your failures and unfulfilled desires and dreams, live there as if God is there, because He is there and He is still carrying out His plan and purpose. He may just have something even better in store for you. You ask me any day today, would you want that paper with PhD on that paper with your name on it? Or do you want your name on One Hope Community Church? One Hope Community Church. By far, I would choose that. Not even a struggle for me. I would choose that. You see, God knows better. He knows better. So I want to invite you today, as the praise team comes up. The song that we're going to sing says this: I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I want us to ask ourselves, what is it that you're building your life on right now? Is it this desire to be part of some feast that you think you should be sitting at? Whether it's how many, I don't know, what figure salary, what job, or group of people that you should be part of, whether that's certain, a type of people or class of people or job or situation or career. Not saying don't work hard for it, but realize that that party isn't all that great as you think it is from here, looking at it. See through the lens of the book of Esther and realize that party ain't all that great. So don't be envious, jealous, but participate in the feast that God has for you right now, in your present situation, in the now, even in your unfulfilled desires and dreams. His grace is still at work, and may we find that together. So I invite you to stand as we sing our last song. Let's remind ourselves or ask ourselves once again, what is it that I'm building my life on? Let me build it on a firm foundation. Your promise, your calling, your desires for my life. Let's go to the Lord and let's sing it together.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. There is no one like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder, show me who you are and fill me with your to those around me. Let's sing that again. Worthy of every song. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around. Holy, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy me in your love. I build my life upon your firm foundation, Lord. I put my trust in you. Oh, let's sing. I will build my life. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy,
take that poem and milk it out too much, but still, are we like that lady in that story? Our hearts are so upset and angry because we think that things are being stolen away from us, that God is not being generous with me. I feel like I'm giving God everything. In fact, I'm sacrificing, but God doesn't even know. All the while, He's continuing to be generous with us, sharing His wonderful wealth with us. Where is our heart at today? Do we not live in a city where it makes our hearts become so stingy, doesn't it? Like we feel like, no, but we don't have enough. We don't have enough. Need more. I wish if we just have be part of a bigger feast, bigger financial feast, or if I'm just part of that group of people, that job, if I'm part of this type of situation, that school, my life will just be better. And all the while, we're unhappy and miserable. Please go to God with that heart, and let's surrender that heart to the Lord and ask God to help us. But also, God has given us, some of us, and more, a place of position of authority. Let's pray for protection over ourselves as well. You might think that, no, but I'm not the king of Persia. My power is so little. Well, you may feel like that. But in that circle where you're standing, your power actually may be quite a bit. If we're not careful, we may run the risk of becoming a Xerxes. So let's ask God for protection, because there's a purpose for which He's placed us there, that place of authority and position. Once again, for those of you, your hearts have become so dry because you feel like you need to belong somewhere else, at some party, some feast that you're not part of. Know that that feast is here, right now, before God and with God. That's where the feast is. So let's go to God in prayer. I invite you. Let's pray. Thank you so much, because so often we don't see you. And so often we feel like you're missing from our lives. But you show us and will show us through the book of Esther that you are always there, behind scene, around us, in our lives, working even when we don't see you. I pray that we would recover a generous heart once again. And I pray that for some of us here today, we will put an end to our regrets. God, I pray, if there's some of us who are still carrying regrets from our past, what has happened, what has not happened, what I did, I didn't do, may you put an end to it, knowing that you can use it to shape us and mold us, What is more, you can bring your good plans even through our regrets. And God, help us to get sucked into this lie that says we got to be part of that feast, this feast in the world. Help us to know that we don't need to be part of that feast. And help us to live knowing that you are already in our lives. We ask for your feast in our community, Lord, in ways that are different from the world and how they celebrate their feast. You be our feast. Please bless this series and bless us, Lord, and help us to restore this perspective and the vision that you want to bless us with through this book. We lift up what is to come after service, wonderful, amazing friends that are here from FCC. As we celebrate, may that place truly be a feast, spiritual feast that you have prepared for us together. May the Lord bless you and keep you, my friend. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.